What's up, everybody? Hey, man. So this is a very special live here today. Um, Normally I try to go live at 5, but I got Fusen, who is an amazing new writer of the Substack. I've been devouring her pieces every time she drops one. It's just absolutely fabulous. And one of the things that I've loved about it, Fusen, is for the longest time, when me personally, as a white heterosexual male who obviously likes women, when I've thought about sex work, it's been from more of a very cursory understanding. And as I've kind of grown in, you know, women's issues and everything else, like I haven't had that firsthand experience from somebody who talks about it. So reading your stuff as someone who is historically trained, this is the kind of things that we look for, that we really appreciate, that says something about an era. Because for a lot of times we don't get to hear firsthand accounts from folks like you. So I want to start off there. What kind of made you? What was the decision that you said, "Hey, you know what? I want to write on Substack. Like I want to tell my story."
Well, it's interesting. There was I found out I made a post on Reddit a couple of years ago about something that happened, an incident that happened in Amsterdam.
Mm,
Um, and it was on the Amsterdam subreddit, and I was saying like, if you come to the red light district, you shouldn't do this, or this. Like this. These things are totally unacceptable. You shouldn't do that, right? And people were like, I never knew that. I
mm,
never understood that. I never knew anything, and I'd like to hear more about this. And so what I did is first I went to Medium,
mm,
and I wrote under a pen name. So for all intents and purposes, I wrote under an assumed identity, and I started just writing about things that were happening in Amsterdam, and um and then I started realizing that, like, people want more of a context to this about not just sex work as it's happening in Amsterdam, but how I got into sex work, because people were asking me these questions. I quickly realized that Medium was not the place for such a thing, right? That they
mm,
were very, like, tight on it. You couldn't make any money off of anything that really referenced sex work. Um, and you were kind of, um, from how I saw it and how I saw how other sex workers were being treated on Medium, you were chastised, and you were, kind of outcasted, and publications wouldn't have anything to do with you.
mm,
And then I was talking about this to somebody who was quite a successful writer on Medium. I won't mention their names,
mm,
but they said to me, they said, "Do you want to have total control of your writing? Do you want to go to a platform where you can write about what you want, and you're in control of that, and you're in control of how much you charge people to write it, and you have full autonomy over your work, and nobody can say nothing about it. If people don't want to read it, they don't want to read it. If people do want to read it, they'll read it." I
mm.
said, "Yeah, of course." And they said Substack, and so I came to Substack, and then I was writing about sex work as well as other things, and I kind of, that's how I came to Substack, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, it's fascinating because you mentioned that when you wrote on Reddit, that you talked about, hey, if you come to the red light district, you should, like, this is what's permissible, this is what isn't. And I've noticed, like, even in, say, like, gym culture, or in and really what we're talking about with sex work, I personally think is very much a subculture, right? I had friends that were in the BDSM scene and, into sex swinging and the sex clubs and all that stuff. And as a writer, that's always kind of fascinated me. Um, but what 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 are some things that you think are like sort of that seem intuitive, but a lot of people don't really understand about sort of the do's and don'ts of sex work? Like, let's say for someone like let's say myself, if I were to go into even Amsterdam, because for context, Amsterdam for us in America is seen as like this sort of Sodom and Gomorrah, Wild West kind of place.
Libertarian, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really not, right? I someone who's been to Amsterdam, it's actually to me, it's kind of a chill city. You've got bike paths, you've got, and then you've got the red light district, which is actually a really tiny part of Amsterdam. But
Absolutely.
what are some of the kind of the do's and don'ts, and then what do you think are the really like the important ones that you want people to understand about it?
Number one, above anything, if you go to the red light district, do not ever take pictures of anything that includes the women in the red light district. Don't take tourist snaps. Don't take pictures of the windows. Don't film the women. And don't do it, because one, it's actually illegal, and you get these like people say, I can take a picture of whatever I want, like this kind of, you literally by law you can't. You can get fined for it, and the fine is generally set by the police, and the police will enforce it.
Mm,
That's the number one rule, and that's because a lot of women who work there, their families don't know that they work there. Right?
mm,
They've all got stories. They've all got, they're all going through their own personal crises, and they're all going through things that are, yeah, that people can't really imagine, and taking a picture, posting on social media, their abusive husband or boyfriend sees them there, they know where they work. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could happen.
right.
So that's the number one thing. The second thing is don't, it should be obvious, but don't haggle with prices. Yeah, never haggle.
Mm,
If you don't like what a woman is saying a price is, don't go with that woman. Don't haggle, Don't harass. That goes about, is obvious. But really the one that stands out to me, to answer your question, is the pictures. Because that's the thing that, it's well known. It's like tourists go to Amsterdam, they visit the red light district.
mm.
And the intuitive thing to do when you're a tourist is to take pictures, right? Just 100% don't take pictures.
Yeah,
That's
no.
that's it.
So basically just those two things, right? Is
Don't
they don't
haggle, don't harass. Yeah.
yeah, that's easy. Don't
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
haggle, don't harass. And yeah, I could see how pictures would be a big deal, especially if women are doing this to support their families or like just even for just safety purposes, you know. So now you as you've become a writer, I've seen some of your posts where like, people contact you and it's kind of like this sort of catch 22 is like you're a sex worker
Mhm.
and then you write about sex work, but that's not all there is to you. But people still kind of approach and treat you that way. Um, and I remember there was also a post you put this down where someone said they talked about objectification, and you said, "Yeah, I am an object. I'm literally standing in a glass door." Right?
Correct.
Could you kind of expound on sort of like on 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 two things? Is like one, what you what you want people to see, like sort of even though you write about sex work, see past that to who you are as a writer, and then how is it like going into like sort of a profession to where objectification's part of the game? Like what does that do to you kind of like personally?
I think for many years, that kind of compartmentalization, like it fucked me up in a lot of ways. Like I'm able now after years to be able to turn that off and to play the game, as it were, in the window. Like I can play the game and understand 100% what I am and what I'm there for and what my purpose is for the 5 or 6 hours that I'm stood there or sat there. Um, what I'd like people to understand is that, to put it crudely, right?
Mm,
No, like Sean Connery was more than James Bond. Yeah,
mm,
he wasn't just James Bond, right?
mm,
He'd done 100 other things. He had different interests. He had different, he was a person who played a role. Yeah.
mm.
Um, and despite what people may think, it sounds like an abstract comparison, but I promise it'll come back on itself. Like despite what people thought, like he was more than James Bond, and people would go up to him and make, impressions of Sean Connery being James Bond, but that's more than what he was, right? Like I like people to understand categorically that what I do in 5 to 6 hours is entirely performative and isn't exactly who I am as a person. And
Mm.
anything that I am is separate from my work. I don't know if that answers your question, and I hope it does.
It does actually. It really does because I think, and this might be why I think sometimes people struggle with the nature of sex work intuitively. Besides the moral hangups that everybody has, is especially in America for a lot of what we do, people define themselves by what they do as a profession. It's pretty much like the first question you get at, like you ask somebody on a date, like, "Hey, what do you do?" And I've done this myself when I was an aviation manager. Like I carried myself like part of how I thought an aviation manager would carry themselves. And that is a lot of performative is really, if you think about it, is performative. Because that's not the totality of me. And so yeah, and so I absolutely get what you're saying with that work being performative, but it's also separate.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like it's completely separate. I have abiding interests outside of sex work, Um, although I write exclusively about sex work, as you mentioned, that
Mm,
is not all, or it may seem like I write exclusively about sex work. Like there is a whole bigger subtext to what I write,
mm.
which I try and I try and get across. I
I
try and
Go ahead, I'm
get
sorry.
across, get it. No, it's okay. It's quite all right. Like I try and get across, like that whilst my life, my job is selling sex, there's a lot more factors to my life that if you read my work, you will understand that it's not the sole. There are several stories within one of my stories that might appear to be about sex, but are more than sex. Does that make
No,
sense?
no, yeah, 100%. I mean, I the one story that really I think hit me the hardest, where I thought you were really, really tough on yourself, was the one about the guy you were dating outside of sex work, and
Mhm.
you didn't tell him about it, and it went very poorly.
Mhm.
And how you felt about that afterwards, like I think that was, you know, I it hit me personally really hard since because like for the longest time, for a lot of the mistakes that I made, uh, in my own personal life, especially in love or relationships, I was very critical, very hard on myself, and I rarely gave myself any grace. And so that's why I think I reached out to you on that one, and I even left a comment and say, hey, it's like I understand it. I think we might have even talked about it on a live, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
yeah, 100%. And but here's the one thing now that I get a chance to ask you about it is like English is probably what your second or third language, and third, okay,
Yeah. Yes.
and you write. I mean, your writing is amazing, right? I mean, it is just, and I know that and from past discussions, you were out of your house, you're out of your home at 15. You were on the streets in Istanbul, and then you've kind of made your, some of your life is like, where did you learn to like write so well? Like, I've wanted to ask you that for a while. It's like your writing is it's amazing, and you've got and just turn of phrase, use of the English language, you do it so well. Like, how did that whole thing come about? Like, how did you go from out at 15 years old in Istanbul, Turkey, to where you are now and being able to write in your third language the way you write?
Well, I think it's fair to add a disclosure that I translate some of my paragraphs that I can't convey in English.
Yeah.
Like, uh, um, writing in literature, even before I was kicked out, was probably, it still is my biggest passion, like as a person, and it always has been reading and writing and and when I was a kid, I used to write a diary, and I used to watch English and American TV programs
Mhm.
a lot, to um absorb a lot of English language, like The Simpsons, for example. I'd watch that to learn English, and to
Okay.
get the nuances of English and things like that. And I'd have this diary, and I'd try to write it in English because I knew nobody else in my family could write it.
Mhm.
Read it, sorry. I knew that they were unable to read it. Um, and ever since then, I've kept diaries in entirely English, mostly.
Mhm.
I haven't ever stopped keeping a diary. And I think just as the years have gone on and as I progressed in life, when I came to Amsterdam, like a lot of people speak English, and I could speak it just enough in the Netherlands to get by when I first came,
Mhm.
before I could speak Dutch.
Hmm.
Um, and the more I spoke it, the better I got. I mean, it stands to reason, right? Um, so that's how that came about. And then I started really getting into literature and reading a lot of James Baldwin books, James Joyce, like a lot of really deep kind of intellectual stuff. Like, I don't know if you've ever read Ulysses by James Joyce, but
Yeah.
that's a very complicated book to read and to follow. And once I felt like I read it several times, and once I felt like I understood it, I was completely at one with myself, knowing that I could speak English properly and write English properly. And I started, as I said, I started on Medium, and I started getting better and better and writing personally, and just practice in every single way. That's I want to be a writer,
Mhm.
and to be a writer, I have to write. I can't write in Turkish on Substack because my readership would drop.
Mhm.
Like, I can't write in Dutch. Perhaps I could write in German, but English is the lingua franca, right? So I would
Yes.
just write in English. Yes, Dana, I did read Ulysses. It's my favorite book. I've read it several times.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Do you know about like, and this is what we do as historians, we ruin things for other people potentially. Do you know about James Joyce and his personal life and his love letters to his wife?
About farts and shit and all that kind of, yeah, yeah, I know exactly.
Okay. I didn't want to ruin it for you, but I kind of wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read his love letters.
Yeah, I have too. I was just like, whew, it's like that man had to get it out somehow.
If you've read any of his work, The Dubliners or Ulysses, you know that man somewhere has got some kind of.
Talk about the duality of man. Hey, people, I'm telling you right now. So for those of you who don't know, I too have read a lot of James Joyce work back when I was a younger man in my 20s. Funny you mentioned some of the writers I read. I loved in college: James Baldwin, James Joyce.
Mm,
Um, Read a lot of their. Walt Whitman was another one of mine.
yeah.
Um, and someone clued me in one day. And said, "Hey man, have you read the love letters?" I was like, "No." And they didn't tell me anything about it, right? So here I'm thinking like, "Oh man, I'm about to go get the secret sauce, from the man himself on how to woo all these ladies." And they're like, and I read it, I was like, "Yo," I was like, "What is this?" You know, I was like, so for those of you who don't know, but if you really you want a whole picture of the man himself, just go online and you can Google it, and it's the third one down. James Joyce love letters.
Revelatory. Let's put it that way. It's revelatory. Very special.
Honestly, which brings up another kind of interesting facet. So you read your most recent piece, where
Mm,
I think it was titled uh "I'm the woman that has sex with your husband," or something to that effect. I might have that wrong.
basically, yeah.
Yeah, but you talked about sort of that part of sex work where
Mm,
like where and you kind of delved into that, like how that affects both your business and how that affects you personally. um and I think a good portion of that stems from sort of the puritanical, sexually repressed kind of stuff we place on marriage and we place on couples. Like,
mm.
can you kind of like, and using sort of James Joyce as our example, right? Where here you got one guy doing this, and then he's got these unfulfilled needs. He's going with privately, that he's saying to his wife. How does that kind of like talk? I want. Can you expand a little bit about that, about both in your piece and how that kind of maybe impacts you in your work?
You asking me from an ethical standpoint, or what?
I
What?
guess I would be asking sort of like both from an ethical standpoint and a practical standpoint, right? Like, like is if you can deliver like, do you have like, do you norm like are like some of your clients men who say they have this secret kink, they find it shameful, you're willing to sort of fulfill that, they come back to you, and then that sort of dynamic, then plus the ethics of how that maybe impacts you.
Okay. Um, I have a significant amount of clients who like cheating on their wives.
Mm,
Who like cheating on their wives. I also have a significant amount of clients who are addicted to sex workers and happen to be married. That's a real thing, right? And maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. But
okay.
um, they're addicted to sex workers.
Mm,
They they it's a thrill or whatever, man.
mhm,
Practically, I don't give a
mm,
fuck what they are, who they are. As
mm,
long as they're above age, they're clean, they're not an arsehole, and they're sober.
mm,
That's what they do in their family life or in their personal life is their business. That's not mine. They're paying me to give them a service, and half the time I like it stands to reason that beforehand nobody comes up to me, right, and says, I'm married.
yeah.
Like nobody does that, right? I either find out after the fact, after getting to know them. Like the numbers of the amount of married men that I've slept with are probably way higher than what I think they are, right? Just
Yeah.
because people don't talk about that stuff. They don't want to say it. I usually find out afterwards or somewhere down the line after we've had several sessions together, they will turn around and say to me that they're married. I'll learn
Mm,
it after the fact. When I learn that fact, practically I still don't give a shit, right? Like just frankly speaking, I don't care what they do and how they want to conduct their lives, whether it be it honestly or dishonestly. That's for them and their conscience. It's not for me, right? Um, ethically, it's very hard for me to maintain the aforementioned attitude that I just mentioned, right?
why?
Because I struggle. sometimes, Frederic, with not giving a shit,
Yeah.
right? Because I understand that in that picture of their dishonesty to their family, I'm in that picture, right?
Yeah.
I may not be the main focus of that picture. Their dishonesty will be the main focus of that picture, but I am in that picture. I'm
Hmm.
there as someone who enabled that to happen and whatever. So I realized that wives, or perhaps children, will see me as a co-conspirator in the collapse of their family. And to tell you the truth, I don't think it's fair to think like that, personally, but I know people do think like that. And I know people will leech on to the other woman as someone who is equally as culpable
Hmm.
as them. But someone said to me in a comment yesterday on that piece, they said, their culpability, the man's that is, starts and ends with them. Right? And I really, I was stunned by that because I'd never thought about it before. I mean, I'd had in fragments thought about it, but with
Really?
them,
You've never kind of put that out there. Like you've never.
yeah, not as succinctly as that, right? It's always been
Mhm.
fragmented, right? So I've thought it perhaps in other ways, and I've always thought to myself, like, yeah, you know what? Like I may be behind the glass and I may open the door, but nobody has to make them walk through it, right? Nobody, nobody's forcing it. I don't coerce anybody. Yeah, I knock on the window. Yeah, I wink. Yeah, I blow kisses. Yeah, I do all of these things. But
Mhm.
I'm never ever holding a gun to somebody's head to be like, right, okay, you have to walk through this door and you have to have sex with me and you have to cheat on your wife. That's never something I've ever done because that's weird as fuck. And why would I? Like, I've just been there. They had to make the conscious choice to do it, right? They consciously they had to make that conscious choice to do it. We all have, um, most of all in the Western world, we all have free will. Most of all in Amsterdam, 100% people have free will in Amsterdam in that respect. So they they made that decision and they come through the door. And that's why I tell myself, but there was residual guilt. And I tried to be very, in a sense, I tried to put elements of contradiction in that piece, right? In how I'm saying that I don't give a fuck, but there is still a part of me that gives a fuck, right?
Yeah.
And that comment specifically was like, you're 100% right. The culpability begins and ends with them.
Yeah.
And it's,
And
yeah.
yeah, no, no, no. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No,
You.
no, I'm finished. I'm finished, Frederic. I'm
No,
finished.
it's fascinating because you know one of the things I think is a problem with modern masculinity is the lack of accountability and culpability.
100%.
Is you are and part of me, I think from my life and the trauma that I've suffered and how I've learned to deal with it has been from almost radical sort of self-control, like in the sense of what do I control? And I control how I react and how I act. I don't always act my best self. I act out of trauma, I act out of fear, just like everyone
Mhm.
else. But, you know, in fact, I will find ways to say, well, I could have done this, right? Like I could have done this better, or I should have done this, I should have done that.
Mhm.
And those individuals, the folks that come and visit you, it's their choice, right?
Sure.
It's not like they're walking by the red light district or by your door and like, oh my God, it's the magnetic pull of, I mean, part of that is,
Yeah, sure, sure.
you might be a siren temptress with your, wink song, but I mean, unless you've got some kind of magical power, you know, they turned towards the red light district. They went in there. They looked at you. They made a choice, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so part of it, I absolutely agree with you that it is unfair that you're considered a homewrecker. Now, where I kind of struggle with that is like, like for me, the tough part about it is say, like, so there's two parts to this for, if you'll bear with me is like, so I have a friend, she went out, we chat, we're just friends about my age. And she's like, yeah, I made out with this younger guy, right? And he tried to get me to, go in the bathroom and have sex, and I drew the line there. But I like making out with him. I'm like, I was like, how old was this guy? He's like, he's 23. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, and I was just curious. I wasn't chastising her. And she's like, well, I was touch deprived. I was like, oh, okay. I understand that. And I get that part of it where it's like, you know, for me, the hard part in my life now is I crave more intimacy,
Uh,
which is much to me, I've made this argument, you can't really get that from sex work, and that's not what those women are they're not there for that. And if you do get it, you're crossing the line into what that person really is, right?
Let me stop you there for a second.
Okay.
Just for a second. We have something called a girlfriend experience, right? Which is more intimate and is more touchy feely and is kind of like it's way more expensive than just being serviced.
It
But
is.
but whether that's sincere or whether that's like, well, of course it's not sincere, right? But
Right.
whether it feels like a realistic simulation, that's one thing. But that no, like we are, instinctively as sex workers, we do it, but we don't do it in good faith, and that's the honest truth, right? We do it in the sense that if someone feels like they're being touch deprived or they
Mhm.
feel like they're emotionally deprived, we know that if we give them what they want, they'll come back again and again and again and again and again. It's
Oh
it's a
yeah.
cycle. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
sorry
No,
to interrupt you.
I've dealt with, I've seen it with strippers, like, or
Mm.
exotic dancers, whatever they prefer to be called. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The struggle with me, for that kind of experience would be my brain, which can the doubting side, the horrible side is gonna tell me, this is a lie, bro. You paying for a lie. It ain't on them. They're giving you good customer service, but this is a lie. You want the real deal and you're not getting the real deal. Right. And then the other part of it is like, man, you don't know what they went through to put them here, right? You don't know like what circumstances in life led them to this place, and now you're contributing to that, you know. And now again, I could see, and this is the problem with when you start, that's why I loved your piece where you're like, I don't give a shit, but I do, right? Because it's that internal struggle of you're contributing to this, Frederick, of this objectification, but also there's the reality of them limited in the world and they got to pay the bills, right? And so like, the struggle I had is like, I remember when I was in Munich, right? And everywhere I go in Europe, n- my big ass can't hide or be anything but an American, right? Everybody knows I'm an American. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I was walking down the street and I didn't know Munich was kind of the way it was, right? Like
Yeah.
it's got, for those of you who hadn't been, they got the casinos, they got the burlesque shows, they got it's kind of like Amsterdam a little bit.
It's like Weimar Republic kind of.
Yeah, I didn't know it was like that, right? I was like, oh, I'm gonna go see some historical, the historic district, and I get to see all this like great architecture. And I roll in, I was like, oh, it's like this. Oh, okay. And I was walking down the street. I was on the other side, and they had these ladies outside as like a cabaret slash good time kind of spot. And there's about 5 of them, and they're hollering in all kinds of different languages, you know? And all of a sudden, I hear in English, "You, big American, come over here."
Ah,
So I walk across the street, I said, "Who's hollering at me?" Because I'm like, I'm having fun, right? And it was just like, a pack of wolves just to send it. You ain't come in here, da da da. Like, and they're all speaking English, and I love it because I'm like, there's just something about me. I love talking smack, especially it doesn't matter who. I was like, I just love it. And so I ended up talking smack with him, and but I was like, ladies, I can't go in. I said, but I appreciate your time. So I literally paid each of them €5. I said, thank you for this. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate the banter, but I gotta go. Because I knew if I went in, I was gonna be in trouble. Like
Oh,
I would I remember this as a young Marine when I would go to, you had a hard 2 weeks and then you go to the good time, you know, to the exotic dancer club, and then you come out and you're like, damn, I lost the whole paycheck. Like it's
nice.
gone, man. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm not mad at the women because again, I made the choice. That's what they're doing their job. They're trying to make a living. You know, and so I mean, I think my like I think you can't help to your point on your piece, and a larger point is I think you wouldn't be human if you weren't two minds of it. You know,
Yeah.
like because like this is we're talking about like because in a certain way, and the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you was we're all objectified and we're all exploited, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, right? When I was in
Right.
aviation and I was pulling bags, you know, I I I got injured. I broke my hand at work. I've pulled muscles in my shoulders and in my back. I've seen workplace injuries that I've had to take employees to the hospital. I've seen employees collapse from heat exhaustion. And had to
Mhm.
call EMS. Because planes had to get out on time. They had to get loaded. But I have bad knees and all kinds of stuff from the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
So we all give our bodies in some sense to, I mean, into our work. And if one thing I want folks to take away from this is that sex workers are doing the same thing we are, but in an even more intense way. And I think they deserve more respect for that. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's
Absolutely 100%.
and it's hard to square that away sometimes, where it's like because society has this, instead of looking at it like that, they look at it like it's shameful or it's this or it's that. But yet there's you wouldn't exist if people didn't want or need it.
Why yeah, exactly. But why do people concern themselves so much with that? Like, that's the question. Like, why do people concern themselves? Like, I understand the sex workers are not in the kind of rotisserie scapegoat that's going around lately, like where people are being scapegoated left, right, and center.
Right.
Um, that that place is also reserved for something that I also am, which is the trans woman.
Hmm.
Like, like I don't understand like why people are so it's so against it and so vicious when it comes to their criticism of sex workers.
I
Um, yeah,
No, go ahead. You're gonna make a point.
I think I think it's born from a lack of understanding, right? It's born from people who are usually deeply uncomfortable about sex,
Hmm.
like in general, people who are deeply uncomfortable about sex, and people who are um like and turn that projection out on top of people who give it away, like not give it away, who sell it because
Hmm.
they can't reconcile their own discomfort with sex, right? And that's where I think it comes from. And you'll find quite a lot, Frederick, that those who are most vocal about sex workers are actually the ones who use them as well,
Of course,
right? You know,
of
it comes from
course.
guilt as well.
I think you hit it. I mean, you know, you answered your own question is like you hit it the nail on the head. Because I like there's things that I understand sort of on an abstract intellectual level, and then there's things on an emotional level I really don't understand.
Oh.
Just like hatred of women, just like the visceral from men. I don't get it. Especially men who say they want to be manly man and alpha, this and that, but then they spend most of their time worried about what women do and hating on them instead of focused on what they're trying to do as a man.
Do you know the
So
women they hate though, Frederic? The women they hate, Frederic, are the ones that they can't dominate. Right.
yeah,
They hate the women who won't give them what they want because they've been raised in a society that makes them feel entitled
yeah,
to getting whatever they want.
hundred
Like
percent.
that's exactly what and the manosphere, Andrew Tate and all those fucking like dickheads, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
people exist because there are women of influence who are turning around saying, no, like, you know what, I don't need a man to support me
Hmm.
to do what I want in life. I can support myself. And they're thinking, well, where the fuck does this leave us? Like, where does that leave us? Like, we're supposed to support you. We're supposed to hold you up. You're supposed to stay home and look after us. You're not supposed to be independently minded and free thinking. You're supposed to, bend to my will. And because this wave of feminism that's come in the last 10 years or so, 15 years, like, it's took them by surprise because for the first time in a long time, women as feminists are
Hmm.
critically thinking, yeah, about how we can advance ourselves into society and get into positions. For fuck's sake, you had well, not consecutive, sorry, pardon me. You had two female presidential candidates.
Yep.
Like the fact that you had two female presidential candidates would have made them incandescent with rage, because they don't believe by principle that women are clever enough, responsible enough, and have the emotional sensibility to be in those positions. And it scares the fuck out of them. And that goes all the way across the board. It goes with sex workers making decisions about who they can and don't sleep with, who they do take as clients, you know, and they can't stand that. They just cannot stand that because it just tears apart the worldview that either they've learned to believe is the case or they've been taught to believe is the case.
I'll take a little bit of a different tack on that. Is I think they do know. They do know how smart these and capable these women are. It's apparent.
Sure.
And I think it scares the shit out of them because what that
Absolutely.
says to weak men is that you automatically just can't lord over these women no more, right?
Right.
You like they look at it as, oh, because the problem with this toxic masculinity is you're competing against everybody, but you're not, right? You're not. It's just you and what you're trying to do.
Right.
So the problem is when you think you're competing against everybody, you perceive everybody else as a threat, and they're
Right.
not threats, right? So, because my response to all these so-called alpha males is like, well, women are doing this and women are doing that. Well, why do you care? Doesn't matter what they're doing, man. Honestly, it's fine if what they're doing. In fact, the more freedom and the more that they get helps us out because now we have somebody that's on our level and there's more strength in numbers now. They're a bulwark against us, or I'm sorry, they're a bulwark against the elites crushing us all, right?
Mm.
But because you've got okey doke so badly, because your masculinity is so damn fragile that you're worried about what these women do, you're trying to keep them oppressed, thus making yourself weaker. That's the
Right.
problem I have with those dudes. And so you look at someone like Kamala Harris or Hillary Rodham Clinton, or you look at all these other women that are more than qualified to run stuff. It's like, okay, so what? And I think with the sex work and with women, being more, dating has changed and them being able to be more permissive on who they have sex with and who they don't, is that it's like, well, I don't get to just have sex and get married because I'm a man. No, you don't.
Uh-huh. No.
Not anymore, you know. And my thing to that is like, so what? Suck it up and do better.
Absolutely. 100%.
If that's what you want, and that's what if you want to be a husband, and that's what you want to do, then go make yourself to what women are looking for in husbands.
Right. Right. Exactly. And what women don't want, for anybody who's concerned, is men who treat them like a sex toy, men who
Mm.
treat them like a living vacuum. They
Well,
don't they don't they don't want those fucking people. Like they don't want like and you'll get people on Instagram and you'll get people on social media networks claiming how good it is to be a trad wife and all of this shit. Right? That is not a good life because you do not have personal agency as a woman once you enter into that life. You forfeit that when you enter into that life because you no longer become an autonomous being. You become whatever your husband wants you to be.
yeah,
And heaven help you if you fucking if you don't toe the line. That's all I'll say, you know? Because
yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's what it is, Frederic. It's people who are holding on to the last vestiges of the great patriarchal um society that we once lived in,
yeah.
and they're acting out in extremes
Mhm.
because they don't want to see that go. Simple as
Yes.
that. They don't want to see that go.
And I think it's the same thing with that trans folks and all the hatred that they're getting is
Yeah.
because trans folks have always been here,
Yeah.
right? It's not, this is not a new thing. It's not, and all we're seeing now is that they're able to talk about their experience. They're able to express what's happening. So we're trans folks being visible is just us being able to understand more of the human condition that we
Absolutely.
denied previously. So trans folks being visible, trans folks talking about their experience, trans folks having equal rights just lets us understand our own humanity that much more. And that
Absolutely.
and for someone who values truth, who values, that's why I studied history and philosophy and religion, is I'm trying to learn about, while what time I have on this planet, what this all is and trying to figure it out. And if we're trying to do that, you don't get that by oppressing women. You don't get that by oppressing other ethnicities. You don't get that by oppressing LGBTQ and trans folks. You get that by allowing those folks to have their space and in their identity and talking about it and sharing it. That's my soapbox. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And as soon as you start attacking people for like sharing those stories, you're going to be much poorer in society. 100%. You'll be much poorer for it. Right. And, but you know, like it's unfortunate that the people who have a vested interest in silencing minorities, not just trans people, not just sex workers, but any minority, right? In the the so-called free world, are the ones who have a vested interest in keeping those people silent and stopping those people.
yep,
You know?
100%. So I've got a heart out close to 11. But I wanted to touch on just real quick. So you've recently, I've seen some of your posts where you're like, Athens was great. You've talked about newfound love, and you're riding around with your partner in crime, Lena, who has also gotten recently on Substack, and who's starting to drop some pieces which are fantastic in writing. Tell me a little bit about that as we wrap up. Like what, like you and Lena, like what's going on there with this van trip? Like what can we expect coming up?
So we are, I suppose, I mean, they call it the young people and stuff. They call it the van life, and and
Mhm.
the kids call it the van life and stuff. But we're basically going around Europe and potentially other countries in other continents in the future. Um, just traveling, sightseeing, but also working and um, just I suppose if we were a band, we'd be touring, right? That's
Nice.
That's the way I would say it is that we would be touring and we're going around and writing together and creating together and um just generally doing the things that I think that we've both missed out on because we've both um had to leave our countries quite young.
Yeah.
We both had to go to other places. We have to work very hard in our lives. Haven't had much time for the things that we've wanted to do. And I suppose we're taking a year or so to just do the things that we want to do as well as work, and see the world a bit. We had talked about many years ago going to the United States, which is something we've subsequently postponed. Uh, like,
Yeah. No.
um, yeah, like, I'm not gonna get lifted by ICE. Um, a trans, culturally Muslim brown woman. Yeah, that'd
Mm-mm.
be high up on their hit list, I think. So
Go to
gonna
Canada.
leave.
Go to
Yeah,
Canada.
We're gonna go to Canada. Go to We have a friend in Mexico who we're gonna see who lives in Oaxaca.
Okay.
Um, so we're gonna hang out with them. Who is quite is a famous writer. I won't plug them because I don't think they're not giving me permission, but they're quite a prominent voice in sex work who we're gonna hang out with for a while.
Dope.
So yeah. Yeah, loads of things on the horizon, traveling and writing and just being, Frederick, I think. Just being and having time to think and
I
and
love it.
live a little bit, you know?
I love that. And I'm telling you, I'm excited for you both. I think, part of
Uh,
creativity is just having that time to really kind of digest life and you know, and then being able to process it and put it out there. And I think you and Lena both have very important voices. That's why I'm so fortunate to have you on here today, that I get to be a part of that, and you know I'll do whatever I can to help promote you guys, because I think you're doing real good work and you're good folks.
So are you, and so are you, right?
Thank
That
you.
that's the thing. You are like I watch your videos, like your daily videos politically now. I'm not
Oh,
exactly I'm not adept at US politics as much as you are, or as for example Lawrence,
yeah.
um like I'm not that like as clued up, but I watch it and I learn a little bit more every day, and I understand the situation a bit every day, and that's invaluable to me. That's really, really, really invaluable to learn from people, and I've learned a great deal from you, Frederick, and
Thank you. I've learned a
you're
great deal from you too. You know,
that's nice to hear. It's really
hun-
nice to hear.
and shout out to the folks at Gen Xy, Gen capital XY. She's talking to Lawrence Winterman, who's in the chat, and Dana Dubois. I first met Fuson through them, or Fuson, I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
she does a talk. She just got done with it today. Dirty Talk with Lawrence Winterman. Check it out. It's always fun, always informative. It lets me know just how much of a babe in the woods I am.
The thing is, I used to think I was a size queen, but Lawrence is a size queen. Lawrence is a size queen, and Dana, the flaxen-haired maiden who's dancing around the Substack Maple, she's they're both wonderful people, and they
They
both
are.
give me a great deal out of life. Um,
I
yeah,
they're
100%.
Lawrence and Dana are both amazing people. I love being on Gen XC every time they'll have me. And I'm so grateful you did this. Uh
Oh,
so
it's my
and
pleasure.
I hate to ask because I'm terrible with last. How do you pronounce Lena's last name?
Zabo,
Lena Zabo?
Lena Zabo, yeah.
Okay, so Lena
The S is
Zabo.
silent. S is
And
silent.
Ayudin is how do I say the last name? You know,
I done.
Aidan. Oh, so Fusen, Aidan, and Lena Szabo,
Yeah.
Lawrence Winterman, Dana Dubois, Gen XC. I'm telling you, amazing writers. Just check them all out. In fact, Gen XC right now has a deal for memberships.
Correct.
You know, so if you're looking to put your dollars in somewhere, Gen XC, Fusen, Lena, I'm telling you, you will not regret it.
Gen
So
XC has $1. Like Lawrence and Donna are $1 for the whole year, right? $1.
$1. How can you pass up on such a good deal? You got
Exactly.
everybody. I'm telling you, everybody looking at this live right now, go check out Gen XC. Check out these deals. I'm telling you, and check out
Yeah.
Fusen too. I got to jump, but I appreciate all of you, Fusen, as always. I
Yeah.
love it.
My great pleasure. Thank you, Frederic, for having
Thank
me.
you. Hey, and as always, keep the faith and defend
Yeah.
democracy. And I'll see you later.
See you
Bye bye.
later. Bye bye.